Hello, welcome to Until My Batteries Expire. I just had a conversation with Dax Xaviera. He is a professional wrestler here in the Philippines. He is a former Philippine Wrestling Revolution Art of Wrestling champion. And he is right now also a maker of wrestling gear, wrestling outfits. He produces gear for both for himself and his fellow wrestlers. He is apparently one of the very few to do this here in the Philippines. The last time Dax and I met face to face was at Filipino Pro Wrestling's final show of this year that took place last October. And we had a very good chat for about 30 minutes or so, where we talked about his wrestling and his skills as a producer, a maker of costumes for pro wrestling. Unfortunately, the recording, there's no audio. Something happened. There's no audio for the recording I made of our conversation, and that's a kick in the balls, right? So now that's why I'm doing this voiceover for this track in order to fill in the details of what Dax and I talked about a while ago. And with that, on with the program. FPW wrapped up their 2024 season last October. They will not have any live events until February. Their wrestlers do continue to train, though. So, according to Dax, they train once a week, around 5-6 hours a day. For that one day's training session. It might be longer depending on how many people are available, and this includes practice matches among the wrestlers. Dax Xaviera began wrestling around 2017. Prior to the pandemic, his visual appearance was inspired by video games, anime, Near Automata, for example, Darling in the Franxx. He before the pandemic, his appearance included wearing a blindfold, wearing a long coat. And fast forward to present day Philippine wrestling, and his look is now based more sporty, based on basketball. He'd be wearing a basketball jersey. He'd have the headband, and his gimmick has changed too. His current gimmick is now the Six Man, which was inspired by FPW founder Red Oliero's feud with his then champion Mike Madrigal. The feud between champion and company owner escalated to the point where both sides recruited various other wrestlers to their cause. And Dax wanted to join Team Red as their sixth man, right? And that caught on. The fans loved the gimmick. They loved the presentation. And quite frankly, it's a good gimmick. It's a good gimmick for Dax. Heck, he should rename himself Dax. From Dax Xaviera, he should rename himself Dax Xaviera, right? Or Dax Xaviera. Dax Xaviera's recent appearances have seen him teaming up with fellow veteran Alex Belmonte III. They were beefing with a gentleman named Legendarius. Unfortunately, the team up didn't last long. Belmonte betrayed Xaviera. For a long time watchers of Philippine pro wrestling, these two men have history. Alex Belmonte III is a former PWR Art of War champion. Dax Xaviera beat him for that title. And I was there. The match they had at the time was fairly distinct. It stuck with me because for the whole match, AB Free and Dax Xaviera each just used one move on each other for the whole match. AB Free was dropping Dax with his big move at every opportunity. Dax was using the sling blade, on AB Free whenever he could. It was a move spam. And this match happened in, I think it was 2019. Maybe it was 2019, and this happened years before Kota Ibushi and Taichi did something similar in New Japan Pro Wrestling. For their match, these two Japanese guys, they just literally kicked each other. Taekwondo kicks, just literally side kick. They just kept doing that until Taichi eventually collapsed because he couldn't take it anymore. His leg gave out from all the kicking, Ibushi was giving him. So right now, the wrestlers of FPW have about 4 months of no live events. They still continue their training, but for Xaviera, he's also doing other wrestling related stuff. In his case, he is also a maker of gear, wrestling gear. The gear is the costumes, right? It can include the what you wear during the match. It can include the outfit you wear when you walk out from the backstage and do your walk down to the ring. He's been doing this. He's been producing gear since he began his career as a pro wrestler. His first client, I believe, was Mike Madrigal. This happened in 2018. Dax made gear for him for PWR Revolution X in 2018. Dax Xaviera has been producing gear for a growing number of clients across the different wrestling companies here in the Philippines. He's even expanded supplying gear to clients abroad. Carlos Zamora from Denmark, Sosai King of the United Kingdom, and most recently he produced gear for Poppy from Malaysia. And the quality of his work is such that Poppy's compatriots in Malaysia have been sending in inquiries, and that's not easy. That's impressive. Let me rephrase that. That's impressive on Dax's part. Wrestling in Malaysia, the wrestlers, they no doubt have their own homegrown costume makers, gear makers in their country. And, in a pinch, they could also tap gear makers next door in Singapore, right? So wrestlers in Malaysia, wrestlers in Singapore, that's an ecosystem over there for their wrestling scene. And instead, wrestlers in Malaysia, Poppy and her compatriots, they're interested in Dax's work, and he's an ocean away. Speaking of Poppy, her latest wrestling gear is Dax's most ambitious project to date. While Dax has produced gear for competitors such as Patricia Ligaya and Super P, Poppy is his first project to produce a full costume for a female wrestler. This is further complicated by the fact that they're in separate countries, and she couldn't just show up at his doorstep to have a fitting. In fact, the first time he delivered the costume, the fit wasn't right, so he had to create a second outfit to replace that. And in the end, Poppy got her costume. She was able to wear it at her most recent match. Dax also has other wrestling gear projects on hand, which will keep him busy while FPW is in its off season. In fact, he will deliver a new set of knee pads for Patricia Ligaya to use at this weekend's Puso Wrestling event. It'll be Puso Wrestling's final show for this year, and Patricia Ligaya will be wrestling on the card. Dax has produced gear for several wrestlers competing at Puso Wrestling, including one for Nigel San Jose. And according to Dax, Nigel San Jose's current wrestling costume, wrestling gear, is probably his most challenging project for a male wrestler. It's basically, he had to create a top and a set of pants for Nigel, and the top was based off it had to resemble a military vest, right? And honestly, the final product looks pretty good on Nigel San Jose. Currently, all his ring gear is handmade, sewn by hand. But he does plan to upgrade and invest in a sewing machine eventually. Wrestling gear has to be durable. It is worn in a full contact sport. I asked Dax about this, and he said that whatever techniques, whatever materials he uses to ensure the durability of his garments, he tests it out on his own gear first. And if it works, if it pans out, then he eventually implements the same techniques, materials to his clients' outfits. According to Dax, he takes about 2 weeks to produce a set of gear. This is all hand sewn, and this is done during his spare time. He still has a day job to pay the bills. He posts pictures of his completed gear on his socials. You can search for Dax Clothing. That's the brand of his online apparel store. And his shop features both one-of-a-kind pieces, like his wrestling gear, as well as ready-to-wear shirts, which he prints. I asked Dax about Fuchsia Libre. Fuchsia Libre is the main character of a locally produced movie about wrestling. And a lot of Filipino wrestlers had roles in the movie. They appeared in the movie. And Dax was cast as the stunt double of the main character. However, he did not make the mask or the gear of Fuchsia Libre. In fact, he hasn't produced any masks or boots yet. So learning how to make masks and boots is something Dax Xaviera would like to add to his skill set. I asked Dax who else is producing gear for wrestlers here in the Philippines, and he said off the top of his head he knew of at least two others. One is Paul Saflor. He is the man behind Figure 4 Championships. Figure 4 Championships is a championship belt maker. That's where they get their bread and butter. In fact, Saflor is the one who made the championship belts for FPW and Puso Wrestling. The other one who Dax is aware of is Solibo. Solibo is, I hope I pronounced that right. Solibo is actually well known in the Philippine cosplay space as a costume maker, costume crafter, and she has provided costumes for a lot of very high-profile cosplayers, both here and overseas. It was a pleasant surprise to find out that Solibo produces wrestling gear. Dax followed up by stating that he also has his own project to produce wrestling gear for cosplay purposes. He didn't go into further details, but I'm looking forward to finding out about the finished product once it's ready. on the wrestling side, February is the earliest schedule for when Dax Xaviera and his colleagues at FPW will be wrestling in front of a live audience again. In between his sessions tailoring wrestling gear, Dax will also be crafting vignettes and promos to build on the momentum he has picked up as the sixth man of wrestling. And I'm looking forward to seeing him really do the work, really put out some really good stuff, and hopefully he'll get promoted from sixth man to starting five. I'd like to thank Dax Xaviera for taking the time to do this interview. We had a wonderful conversation. It's just unfortunate that the recording equipment did not record the audio. It's an annoying fuck up. Still, I hope that my effort to save this interview is of value to you, Dax, is of value to your fans, of value to the fans of FPW, and of Philippine wrestling in general. I'm looking forward to witnessing you achieve more success in the coming months, Dax. More power to you. Thank you for your time again.